Business strategy, implementing strategies. With this voice presentation, we aim to cover in brief these 5 bullet points you see on the screen there. Mainly focusing on culture and culture implementation with a little bit of a roundup and overview of Lewin's force field analysis. The strategy process, from our experience and what we've seen from the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, as traditionally applied, we would normally view the strengths and weaknesses internally and the opportunities and threats as more of an external focus. But this would give us a good analysis of our strategic position as an organisation and an active business. We've also studied the business level and the corporate level with the examples in the course sessions and how these two different types of strategic choices can have an impact on operational business and things like strategic alliances. And now we start to look at the implementation of strategies. It's the culture and strategy. To what extent does organisational culture influence how a strategy is developed and implemented? The nature of culture. What is culture? What is organisational culture? Is it just a set of values, beliefs, traditions, historical norms which have happened over time, very much like creeping change? It's the way things are done around here, apparently. And then the culture and the implementation, so the change, looking to implement. This word means actually do. Here is a definition for your perusal. In this definition, it suggests that unconsciously things are happening. It's taken for granted. You don't realise your day-to-day operations, your day-to-day actions, even attitudes are part of the culture itself. The way you do things is part of the culture. So some of these intangible things which you don't realise are often not obvious. Shine in 1986 suggests this with organisational culture and leadership. So the assumptions, what you think, what you perceive, when you assume something, is your perception. And your beliefs are reinforced by these rituals, stories and symbols. High level symbols, the logo, the brand, the image, the way this is very powerful to make it well known. And the low level things, the environment, where you work, the cleanliness of the building, the sort of the hygiene factors. Given their nature, they exercise a profound influence on how employees undertake their work. There's also the thing about standards. If you're working with people who work to high standards, culturally speaking, you will come in line with this and you will work to high standards. If you work with people who are noisy, loud, and have little focus on the actual duties and tasks at place, you might well find yourself slipping into this. Here we look at the cultural web and the paradigm. Paradigm meaning things like a pattern of something. A paradigm of something is also could be called a typical example, but the pattern of something. Here we go. Here is a nice diagram which sums up the main areas, the main elements that will affect and impact the organisational culture. if a new strategy goes against what is culturally acceptable, it will lead from resistance from stakeholders. We look at resistance as in the Lewin's model in a little bit, and we can look at how we can offer driving forces to change the equilibrium, would be a good word here. So you have to really be very aware of what is culturally acceptable, and change of this is very, very hard. It's normally done by managers, quite often from the top down rather than from the bottom up. We've talked previously about the Virgin organisation and the culture here, very innovative, very sort of market dominant, very, very diverse in its offering of its sub-companies. And Google, very forward-thinking, innovative. Google using very dynamic workplace examples where the sort of the beanbag under the desk thing, and the very open plan offices and the flexi time. Okay, so the activity we're going to be looking at is culture implementation. So the BSU Vice Chancellor and senior managers are considering a new strategy. You can see this from the strategic downloads and the PDFs of the Bath Spa University strategy. These can be seen in session 7, and you can use the web pages with information about the organisation where they've posted the documentation for this. So individually, identify meaning find out the following: the organisational culture of Bath Spa University, strategies that might lead to resistance from stakeholders, staff, managers, students, suppliers, senior people in the organisation, parents, anybody with a valid interest, a stakeholder. What could be done by managers to address this resistance? So the driving forces in Lewin's model would be very sort of interesting here. You must post your answers to the discussion board below the presentation, and then reply to one of your colleagues. So this is the same as we would do in class. Have a discussion to look for deeper learning examples. Use the examples that people post, read about it, try to understand them, and then post a discussion. And then we can then find out and evaluate these further at a later point. Strategic change. Not all organisations are the same type. Manufacturing, service sector, various types, as we well know. Johnson, Scholes and Whittington identify 4 different types of change. Scope is the one angle, and look at the nature is the other angle. So here we have transformation and realignment under the scope of change, and then the nature, incremental and big bang. Incremental, something that happens slow. Big bang, rapid change. So the scope identifies where the change will take place within the existing organisational paradigm, as in the pattern of something, or typical examples of what happens in a workplace. Realignment, the change remains close to what is culturally acceptable, and transformation, change breaks with the existing paradigm. Very hard. Introduce a new culture and new processes in the organisation. The nature is the pace of the organisational change, the pace of this cultural change. Incremental, slowly, using existing structures, practices, processes, and things that the employees are used to. A big bang, dramatic, rapid break with the past. Often will be very hard-nosed and reactive. The evolution, a major paradigm shift that occurs incrementally over a long period of time. The Virgin example that we've used, Richard Branson had a record shop in London, and it's gone from that, it's evolved from that to a multi-business organisation. probably multi-billion-dollar actually, even with spacecrafts that are just trying to launch once again. Adaptation, change doesn't challenge the existing paradigm and occurs incrementally over the time, as in the slow and change from Manchester United having new owners, or you could look at it as in finally their very famous manager leaving to be replaced by a couple of new ones. There's a revolution, change is dramatic and involves a radical alteration in organisations' work. BT's moved from the public and the private sector when the government sold them off, and a reconstruction of rapid change. Example, IBM's moved from being a computer manufacturer to providing computer services. So moving from hardware manufacture, design and manufacture and supply, to also offering software and computer services. So here we have the Lewin model, the Kurt Lewin model, the force field analysis. There is other material and content within the pages and the blocks in the VLE, which you will need to look at, which has two very useful explanations from two different academics explaining exactly how the 5 stages of the force field analysis actually works. So we go from stage 1, the definition, to stage 5, go right down to a detailed plan of action. Okay, with identification, drawing the diagram and explaining it, and then an assessment of what could be done. So here we have Kurt Lewin's force field analysis. So driving forces on the left hand side in green here could be things like staff training, staff development, restructuring that has been an organisational aim on the left. And on the right will be the resistance from the said staff. Now they might be resistant to managers, senior managers, there might not be a very good relationship there. Past experiences within the organisation might have affected them. Low morale, downsizing, mergers, all this sort of things might be one of the resisting forces. So it's what we've got in the middle here is the black line. In some of the diagrams you'll see this black line is a larger box. And this is the equilibrium. This is the sort of the balance area where you're trying to change what's actually happening. And ideally you want to move the driving forces stronger and offer less restraining forces. And then your objectives in the middle will be how you approach these, thinking about the current state of the company or the current state of the culture and what you want the culture to be like. The people are more motivated and happy and singing at work and this sort of stuff. It's quite an interesting theory and it's relatively famous. It's been applied to many service sector industries where there is a heavy involvement in people within the culture of an organisation. Please have a look at the 2 voice presentations by other academics in the pane and then have a go at answering the activity, which is also listed in one of the module blocks and it's also on one of the slides here as mentioned in the activity. Okay, thank you.